There is a photograph on my phone that I cannot bring myself to delete. It was taken at my engagement party, and in it, my best friend Madison has her arm wrapped around my fiancé, her head tilted toward his shoulder, wearing a dress almost identical to mine, her newly dyed hair matching my exact shade of honey blonde. Everyone at the party commented on how we could be sisters. I remember laughing, feeling flattered that she wanted to be so close to me, so connected. I had no idea that she was not trying to be my sister. She was trying to become me. And she almost succeeded. My name is Olivia Harper, and for 15 years, Madison Cole was the closest person to me outside of my own family. We met in the 7th grade when her family moved to our small town in Connecticut, from somewhere in Ohio. She was the new girl, quiet and watchful, sitting alone at lunch with a book she pretended to read. I remember feeling drawn to her sadness, to the way she seemed to need someone. I walked over, sat down, and offered her half of my sandwich. She looked at me like I had offered her the world. Looking back now, I realized that was the moment I became her obsession. I just did not know it yet. Our friendship was intense from the beginning. Madison attached herself to me with a devotion that felt like loyalty at the time. She wanted to know everything about me, my favorite color, my favorite songs, my dreams for the future. She listened with such focus, such hunger, that I felt truly seen. I mistook her consumption of my identity for connection. I thought she loved me. In reality, she was studying me like a textbook, memorizing the answers so she could eventually take my place. Throughout high school, we were inseparable. We dressed alike, which I thought was cute. We wore our hair the same way, which I thought was sisterly. When I got my first boyfriend, she suddenly developed a crush on his best friend. When I decided I wanted to study interior design, she announced the same dream the very next week. I never questioned it. I was young and trusting, and the idea that someone could hollow themselves out to fill themselves with another person was too strange for me to comprehend. After graduation, we both attended different colleges but stayed in constant contact. I went to a design school in Boston, and she went to a state university in Pennsylvania studying communications. Those 4 years gave me space to grow into myself without her constant presence, and I flourished. I developed my own style, my own friend group, my own identity separate from her shadow. When we reconnected after college, I thought she had done the same. She seemed more confident, more independent. She had a job in marketing, an apartment in New York, a life that seemed distinctly her own. I was relieved. I thought our friendship had matured into something healthier. I was wrong. When Madison lost her job at 26, she called me crying in the middle of the night. Her landlord was threatening eviction. She had nowhere to go. Her parents had moved to Florida and made it clear she was not welcome there long term. I did not hesitate. I was living in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, and my spare room had been functioning as a home office. I told her she could stay with me until she got back on her feet. I expected a few weeks, maybe a month or two. What I did not expect was for those temporary weeks to stretch into a year and a half of slowly watching my life get stolen piece by piece. At first, everything seemed normal. Madison was grateful, helpful, eager to please. She cooked dinner some nights, kept the apartment clean, and spent her days applying for jobs. I enjoyed having her there. It felt like old times, like having my best friend back. Ethan, my boyfriend of 3 years at that point, was patient about the arrangement. He said he understood that helping friends was important, and he trusted my judgment. His trust meant everything to me, and I swore I would not let him down. The first strange thing happened about 2 months after Madison moved in. I came home from work one evening to find her wearing my favorite silk blouse. It was a piece I had saved up for months to buy, a soft champagne color that I only wore on special occasions. She was standing in the kitchen making pasta, wearing it casually like it was nothing. When I asked about it, she laughed and said she had spilled coffee on her last clean shirt and needed to borrow something. She promised to wash it and return it. I told her it was fine, even though something uncomfortable prickled at the back of my mind. That blouse was hanging in the back of my closet. She would have had to go through my things to find it, but I pushed the thought away. Friends borrowed clothes. It was normal. A week later, I noticed she was using my perfume, the same rare, expensive scent that Ethan had given me for our anniversary. When I walked into the bathroom, the bottle was sitting on her side of the counter, half empty. I picked it up, my heart beating a little faster than it should have. She appeared in the doorway behind me. "Oh, I hope you don't mind," she said lightly. "I ran out of mine and yours smells so good. I'll replace it." She never did. The following month, Madison got a new job at a small marketing firm in Manhattan. I was thrilled for her, relieved that she would soon be able to get her own place and return our lives to normal. But instead of searching for apartments, she became more entrenched in mine. She rearranged the living room furniture without asking. She bought groceries and put them in places that disrupted my organizational system. She started answering the door when delivery people came, introducing herself as if she lived there permanently, because at that point, I suppose she did. Ethan started coming over less. When I asked him about it, he hesitated before answering. "It's just strange," he admitted. "She's always there, always watching, and sometimes she says things that feel off." I asked him what he meant. He shifted uncomfortably. "Last week when you were in the shower, she came and sat next to me on the couch, really close, and she asked me what I first loved about you. When I told her, she smiled and said she had all the same qualities. Then she laughed like it was a joke, but it didn't feel like a joke." A chill ran through me, but I forced myself to dismiss it. Madison was socially awkward sometimes. She had never been good at boundaries. I told Ethan he was reading too much into it, that she was just trying to make conversation. He nodded, but I could tell he was not convinced. Neither was I, if I was being honest. But admitting that something was wrong with my oldest friendship felt like admitting I had been blind for 15 years. I was not ready for that yet. The holiday season arrived, and with it came the biggest twist I never saw coming. My mother invited Madison to our family Thanksgiving dinner. She had always liked Madison, had treated her like a second daughter since we were teenagers. What I did not know was that Madison had been calling my mother regularly, having long conversations I was never told about. I discovered this when I overheard my mother say on the phone, "Of course, Madison, you know you're always welcome. You're family." When I asked my mother about these calls later, she seemed surprised that I was surprised. "She's been calling me every week since she moved in with you," my mother said, "just to chat, check in on me. She's such a thoughtful girl, more thoughtful than you sometimes." She laughed when she said it, but the words stung. Madison was inserting herself into my family relationships. She was building bonds behind my back, creating connections that existed outside of me. I started to feel like a middleman in my own life, someone who was only relevant because I provided access to the things she actually wanted. At Thanksgiving dinner, Madison arrived wearing an outfit that stopped me cold. It was not just similar to mine. It was an exact replica. The same cream-colored cashmere sweater, the same brown suede skirt, the same boots. When my cousin pointed out that we looked like twins, Madison beamed with genuine joy. I stood there frozen, my smile plastered on, my stomach turning. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I confronted her. I tried to keep my voice calm, to approach it as a concerned friend rather than an accuser. "Maddie, I've noticed you've been dressing a lot like me lately, and the perfume, and the way you've been getting close to my family. Is everything okay?" Her expression shifted so fast it gave me whiplash. 1 second she was smiling, the next her eyes were cold, hard, unrecognizable. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said flatly. "I just admire your style. I thought you'd be flattered. Most people would be." Then she turned and walked into the guest room, closing the door behind her with a sharp click. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding, feeling like I had just glimpsed something beneath her mask that I was never supposed to see. The months that followed were a slow descent into confusion. Madison oscillated between being my sweet, devoted friend and a stranger who wore my face. She dyed her hair the exact shade of mine. She started wearing colored contacts that matched my eye color. She adopted my mannerisms, my phrases, my gestures. When I laughed, she laughed the same way. When I told a story at a party, she would tell a similar one later, slightly altered, as if the experience had been hers. My colleague Grace was the first person to say out loud what I had been too afraid to acknowledge. We were having lunch near our office, and she looked at me with genuine concern. "Liv, I don't want to freak you out, but your friend is giving me serious single white female vibes. Have you noticed how she's basically dressing like you, talking like you, copying your entire aesthetic? It's creepy." I wanted to defend Madison. I wanted to explain that she had always been a little lost, that she was just going through a phase. But the words stuck in my throat, because deep down, I knew Grace was right. Madison was not just admiring me, she was trying to replace me. The next revelation came when I decided to do something I never thought I would do. I checked Madison's phone. She had left it on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower, and something compelled me to pick it up. Her passcode was my birthday. which should have been a warning sign on its own. What I found made my blood run cold. She had hundreds of photographs of me that I had never seen her take, pictures of me at work, at the grocery store, at family gatherings. She had screenshots of my social media posts going back years. She had a note on her phone with a list titled Olivia Details that included everything from my favorite restaurants to my clothing sizes to my skincare routine. It was organized, meticulous, and terrifying. But what destroyed me most was the folder of text messages between her and Ethan. At first, I thought I was seeing things. Madison had been texting my fiancé. We had gotten engaged 3 months earlier, behind my back. The messages started innocently enough, just casual conversation, checking in about me. But then they evolved. She started telling him things that painted me in a negative light, that I had complained about him, that I had expressed doubts about the engagement, that I was overwhelmed and unsure about our future together. None of it was true. Every word was a lie designed to create distance between us, to make him question me, to open a crack she could slip through. I put the phone down with shaking hands just as the shower turned off. I heard her footsteps coming down the hall. I grabbed my bag and left the apartment without a word, my mind spinning, my heart shattered. I went to Ethan's apartment and showed him everything I had discovered. He was devastated, not just by Madison's manipulation, but by the fact that he had started to believe some of her lies. He admitted that he had been pulling away from me over the past few months because of things Madison had said. He thought I was having second thoughts about our relationship. He thought I was confiding in her things I would not tell him. We sat together for hours, piecing together the full scope of her deception. Every time she had been alone with him, she had planted seeds of doubt. Every time she had called my mother, she had subtly positioned herself as the more attentive daughter figure. Every time she had copied my appearance, she had been preparing to step into my life as if it were a costume she could simply put on. The question was no longer whether Madison was trying to become me. The question was how far she was willing to go and what I was going to do about it. My first instinct was to confront her directly, to scream and demand answers and throw her out of my apartment. But Ethan and Grace both counseled patience. If I acted rashly, Madison could deny everything, play the victim, and turn people against me. I needed evidence, documentation, and a plan. I needed to be smarter than she was. I started keeping a detailed journal of her behavior. Every copied outfit, every manipulative comment, every instance of her trying to insert herself into my relationships. I took screenshots of her phone notes before she could delete them, forwarding them to my own email for safekeeping. I recorded conversations when I could, catching her in lies that she later denied telling. The most damning evidence came from my mother. I finally had an honest conversation with her about Madison's calls, and I asked her to recall specific things Madison had said. My mother was reluctant at first, defensive of her fondness for Madison. But when I showed her the screenshots from Madison's phone, her face went pale. "She told me you had been struggling with your mental health," my mother said slowly. "She said you were having mood swings, lashing out at her, becoming paranoid. She asked me to be gentle with you, to not confront you about anything concerning because it might set you off." Madison had been laying the groundwork to make me look unstable. If I ever accused her of anything, she had already poisoned the well. My own mother would doubt me. The depth of her calculation was staggering. This was not impulsive behavior. This was a long-term strategy, years in the making, designed to systematically take everything I had built and claim it as her own. I knew I needed outside help. I contacted a therapist who specialized in relationships with manipulative personalities. She explained that what Madison was exhibiting were traits of a serious psychological condition, an identity disturbance combined with obsessive attachment. She did not diagnose Madison directly, of course, but she helped me understand that I was not imagining things. I was not overreacting. I was the victim of a calculated campaign to erase my sense of self. The therapist also helped me develop an exit strategy. Madison could not simply be thrown out without consequences. She had established residency in my apartment. She had ingratiated herself with my family. She had positioned herself to claim victimhood if I acted aggressively. I needed to remove her from my life in a way that left no room for her to manipulate the narrative. The first step was securing my most important relationship. Ethan and I had a long emotional conversation where we laid everything bare. I apologized for not seeing Madison's manipulation sooner. He apologized for believing her lies. Together, we decided to accelerate our plans. We moved up our wedding date and started quietly looking for a new apartment. one that Madison would never know the address of. The second step was slowly reclaiming my family. I started calling my mother more frequently, rebuilding the connection that Madison had been trying to hijack. I was honest with her about what had been happening, showing her the evidence piece by piece. My mother's initial disbelief gave way to horror, then to protective anger. "I feel like such a fool," she said through tears. "She played me so perfectly. I thought she cared about this family, but she was just using us to get to you." I assured my mother it was not her fault. Madison was a master manipulator who had spent years perfecting her technique. We were all victims of her deception. The third step was the most delicate. I needed to remove Madison from my apartment without giving her ammunition to use against me. I consulted with a lawyer about my options. Since she had been living there for over a year, she had legal tenant protections. I could not simply change the locks. I needed to formally evict her or convince her to leave voluntarily. I decided to try the voluntary approach first. I sat Madison down one evening and told her, with as much calm as I could muster, that our living situation was no longer working. I said I needed my space back, that Ethan and I were making plans that required me to have the apartment to myself. I offered to help her find a new place, to even cover her first month's rent as a gesture of goodwill. Madison's reaction was not what I expected. She did not cry or argue or beg. Instead, she smiled, a slow, unsettling smile that did not reach her eyes. "I knew this was coming," she said quietly. "You've been different lately, distant. I can feel you pulling away from me." I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "But you need to understand something, Olivia. I'm not going anywhere. This is my home now. These are my people. You don't get to just throw me away like garbage." Her voice was calm, matter of fact, as if she was stating an obvious truth rather than making a threat. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Madison, I'm asking you nicely to leave," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I don't want this to become a legal matter." She laughed, a short, humorless sound. "You think you can scare me with lawyers? You think anyone would believe you over me? I've spent the last year and a half building relationships with everyone in your life. Your mother loves me. Your fiancé confides in me. Your colleagues think I'm sweet and harmless. Who do you think they'll believe when this gets ugly?" She stood up, still smiling, and walked toward the guest room. At the doorway, she paused and looked back at me.